Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our 10th annual Executive Forum kickoff event. I want to thank you all for joining us today. It's great to see so many returning and new friends joining us again this year. I am Joe Greaves, one of the managing directors of the Cordia Resources practice at Cherry Bekaert, and your leader of this Financial Executive Forum for the last 10 years. As you will see, we also have 4 other great local sponsors who we will introduce shortly. We are all quite excited to see such a great response with over 550 people registering for this series. Like a lot of you, I'm a financial professional and CPA, and I know how valuable these high quality and relevant training events are to those managing corporate accounting and financial functions. Once again, we are providing this series in a fully virtual format and are running it in 2-hour sessions every Thursday morning for the next 6 weeks. We have found this format seems to work well for all of our collective clients and friends. You should know we have a great Cherry Bekaert team running our virtual program today, but please bear with us if we have any technical issues. I also want to thank all the great people who joined us along with our co-sponsors for our pre-series happy hour on September 26th at the Fogo de Chao in Tyson's Corner. It turned out to be a nice evening. It was great to see so many people really enjoying the opportunity to network in person with their Financial Executive Forum peers. Finally, I'd like to update you on a change in the leadership of this Financial Executive Forum program and my personal plans. As I think a lot of you know, I was one of the original 3 founders of the Cordia businesses and personally formed and have led this forum for the last 10 years. As I announced last year, our Cordia business and its great employee base were acquired in 2023 by Cherry Bekaert LLC and have now been successfully integrated into a larger Cherry Bekaert organization over the last year. With the integration mostly complete now, I will be officially retiring at the end of this calendar year at the age of 67 to spend more time with my wife, Patty, and our growing family, including our 9 grandkids and friends. I'm also proud to say I've been an active CPA and a leader in the greater Washington financial community for over 40 years. It's been a really great run for me, and I have loved working with everybody in this great financial community. As part of that process, I'm now transferring my leadership role of this Financial Executive Forum to Grant Palmer, one of my key business partners at Cordia Resources starting today. I'm planning to remain at Cherry Bekaert for the next 3 months, but I wanted to personally say a big thank you to all of you in this community and our sponsors who have attended and supported us in this great forum over the last 10 years. At this point, I'm going to ask Grant to continue with the program. I hope you support him in the program for the future. Thanks, everyone.
Well, there's not enough words to say thank you, Joe. We really appreciate from the bottom of our hearts what you've done with all of our careers, but also in building the Financial Executive Forum over the past 10 years. And certainly huge shoes for all of us to fill, and you'll sorely be missed. But we know you'll be around, Joe. So good morning, everyone. As Joe mentioned, my name is Grant Palmer, and I'm a partner with Cordia Resources by Cherry Bekaert. And as you can see, we have 6 great programs for you in this series this year. If you fully attend all 6 events and you're a CPA, you can earn a total of 12 full CPE hours. Our series includes, beginning today, the Cordia Resources by Cherry Bekaert team will feature our CFO Roundtable, which will once again include an impressive group of local CFOs and a CEO. On October 10th, next week, the Cherry Bekaert team will present Anchoring Your Foothold in GovCon and DCAA's Hot Topics. On October 17th, Jennifer Lewis will once again join us as our ethics instructor from the AICPA's Business Learning Institute and will teach our Virginia Ethics program. The 2-hour course is required by the Virginia Board of Accountancy. On October 24th, Marsh McLennan, a new sponsor to the FEF this year, will present Managing Your Risk, Innovation in Employee Benefits and Business Insurance. On October 31st, Halloween, the Wells Fargo banking team will present their economic outlook and capital markets update. Hopefully not too scary on that day. Finally, on November 7th, Sage, also a new sponsor to the Financial Executive Forum, will present how AI and digital networks will shape the future of accounting. And some of you may have seen the video at the beginning, but going over the CPE webinar rules again, in terms of NASBA compliance, our polling questions will appear throughout the webinar. You will need to answer 75% of the 8 polling questions to receive full CPE credit for each session. Since you'll be muted during the entire session, please use the Q&A feature to submit your questions to the panelists. Also, please use the chat feature to communicate any technical issues that you may have. After the program, please complete the session survey using the link that we will send to you in a post-event email. Your CPE certificates should be issued within 10 days of this course. If you have any questions, please reach out to Cherry Bekaert Learning at cbhlearning@cbh.com. Now I'd like to give our great team of sponsors a quick chance to introduce themselves. First up is Ben Kane, a Senior Market Director at Wells Fargo. Wells Fargo is a returning and longtime sponsor of the FEF. Ben, you're up.
Hey, thanks, Grant. Appreciate it. Good morning, everyone. I want to thank everyone for joining this year. My name is Ben Kane. I'm with Wells Fargo's middle market banking team here based in the DC area. As Grant said, we've been doing this a long time. I think this is our 8th year running, going back to the days of in person at the Hyatt for a very, very long day. So we're thrilled with the virtual format. It's important for us to be a very active part of the business community across all of our markets. And I honestly don't know an event that better represents a cross-section of our economy. We have really great co-hosts that you'll hear from in a moment, amazing panelists and presenters throughout the whole program, and a super diverse group of attendees. You know, as Joe mentioned, when we look at the names that are on the attendee list, it's rare you see an event with this level of diversity of experience and industries across our economy. You know, we've got companies that range from almost no revenue, early stage, to multi-billion dollars represented. So that's super cool to me. Whether you already know the Wells Fargo commercial banking team or not, I want to make sure kind of you walk away knowing one thing. As the #1 middle market bank and primary market share, we're here to support the business community. And that's all things from providing content like this event to talking about banking. We work with and advise our clients on lending options, streamlining treasury, cash management in today's really challenging rate environment, and much, much more. So with that, I hope you enjoy this year's program, and let me know if we can help in any way. Personally, Joe, it's been a pleasure. I appreciate you including me in this many, many years ago. It's been a pleasure working with you, and hope to see you on the golf course and happy hours and all the things we'll continue to do. Thanks, Grant. Back to you.
Thanks, Ben. That's great. Next is Allie Gregory, an employee health and benefits consultant at Marsh McLennan Agency. As I said earlier, a new sponsor this year, and we're very happy to have them as part of the Financial Executive Forum. Allie?
Thank you, Grant. It's a pleasure to be with everyone today. We are so excited to be a sponsor this year. And we're really learning alongside of everyone who's been participating and everyone who's new. You know, you're new just like us, and we're excited to kind of dive in and get to experience all the sessions. We know great things are ahead with really exciting panelists. You know, I wanted to say one thing to Joe. Your comment about being a grandfather touched me. I have 2 little kids, and their grandfather is so important to them. So you have a big job ahead, and enjoy that time. Thank you for everything you've given to the business community. I do want to take a moment just to introduce Marsh McLennan Agency. MMA provides business insurance, employee health and benefits, retirement and wealth, and private client insurance solutions to organizations and individuals seeking limitless possibilities. With over 11,000 colleagues and 200 offices across the United States and Canada, MMA combines the personalized service model of a local consultant with global resources and expertise of the world's leading professional services firm, Marsh McLennan. We operate mostly in the middle market with clients just like yourselves across all industries and geographies. Our clients are similar in profile to your organization, and we work with many financial executives just like you. We have a local footprint to the DMV. We have offices from Tyson's in Northern Virginia to north of Baltimore and Hunt Valley. I personally am a consultant in our benefits practice where we work to ensure that our clients feel that they have high quality solutions and sound advice backed by experts ranging from actuaries and underwriters to clinical nurses and health management consultants. And you'll get to hear from some of them on our session on October 24th, when we talk about how you can look to improve managing your risk with innovation in the employee health and benefits space and business insurance. So we will see you all on the 24th, and we look forward to being a sponsor this year and hopefully in years to come. And thank you to Grant and Cordia Resources for including us this year.
Thank you, Allie, and welcome. Third up is Letitia Bradley, Senior Partner Marketing Manager at Sage, which is also a new sponsor this year. And we're very excited to have them as part of the FEF as well. Unfortunately, Letitia was unable to attend, and we have pulled Joe back out of retirement to go ahead and give the update on Sage. So, Joe?
Yeah, I'm in pitch hitting already. All right, thanks. I'll do my best. Sage is engaged in knocking down barriers so everyone can thrive. This starts with the millions of small and medium-sized businesses we serve and extends all the way to our partners and accountants. Our customers trust our finance, HR, and payroll software to make life easier for everyone. Our digital network connects small, medium-sized businesses, reduces friction, and delivers insights by digitizing business processes and relationships with our customers and suppliers and employees alike, as well as with governments and banks. With that, there's a reference to that, refer you to her website. And Brian, I'll kick it back to you.
All right, thank you, Joe. Next up is Tracy Sheps, a CPA and partner at Cherry Bekaert. Cherry Bekaert is a returning sponsor to this year's Financial Executive Forum. Tracy, you're up.
All right. Hi, everybody. Very excited to be leading our side this year from Cherry Bekaert. I can't go on without saying something about Joe and thanking him for all he has done to get us to where we are today. It's been such a pleasure, and he's going to be very missed. We are doing our session for Cherry Bekaert on October 10th, and we will discuss the government contractor from small to large maturity model, as well as we'll provide an update on some of the things going on with DCAA initiatives and where they are today. That's always an interesting treat. And our very own Jeff and Essa will deliver that as well with the rest of our team. And just to introduce Cherry Bekaert, for those of you that do not know some of the evolved, where the firm has evolved in the offerings, is we provide a comprehensive solutions from core audit and tax and advisory, including transactional, digital, and strategic business solutions. And today we're also offering more comprehensive outsourced managed solutions that fit your specific business needs by providing industry-focused expertise in government contracting, nonprofit organizations, and to a full breadth of commercial industries. Our significant expertise in government contracting, since that is my baby, provides our clients with full service accounting support, compliance excellence, and best-in-class accounting systems. Whether you are new to government contracting world or just starting to venture into the government work, we have the appropriate solution that you are audit ready at all time. And that you meant to say, if you are new or if you've been in the world for a long time, we're here to help you. Our goal at Cherry Bekaert is to empower your growth through our tailored business operation solutions by bringing you a fresh perspective and industry-leading knowledge, and we partner with you to drive your organization forward. All right, Grant.
All right. Well, thank you, Tracy. Finally, I'd like to introduce Evan Seward, Executive Search Director with our Cordia Resources practice. As you may know, Cordia Resources is one of the original founders of this series, as Joe noted earlier. And Evan, you're up now.
Yeah. Hey, good morning, everyone. Gosh, I've been working with Joe for 7.5 years now. And before that, I'm close to the Greaves family. I actually worked with Joe's son at KPMG. So the small world, but Can you believe it's been 10 years that we've been doing this event? Gosh, I mean, I hope at this point you know who Cordia Resources is, but if not, Cordia Resources by Cherry Bekaert, we provide recruiting and staffing workforce solutions in the fields of accounting, finance, HR, IT, contract administration, pricing, and more. We've always taken pride in our deep roots in the accounting and CPA arena, and have celebrated actually a 1-year anniversary joining Cherry Bekaert, as Tracy lightly mentioned, now with Cordia being a unique part of Cherry Bekaert's advisory practice. We're fully capable of assisting organizations of all sizes and across many industries here in the DC area and across the US with workforce needs, whether it be direct hire or interim staffing. If you find your company is in need of any of this type of support, recruiting and staffing, we're here to help. Hope everyone enjoys the presentation. Back to you, Grant.
Thank you, Evan. Appreciate that. And next slide. So this is today's full agenda of events, and we're about ready to move into the CFO Roundtable. So next slide. I'd like to introduce my friend and colleague, Don Olinger, Managing Director and Senior Advisor at Cordia Resources by Cherry Bekaert. Don organized this fabulous CFO Roundtable and is your moderator for today's event. Don, please take it from here.
Thanks, Grant. Appreciate it. And good morning, everyone. I'm Don Olinger, Managing Director and Senior Advisor of Cordia Resources by Cherry Bekaert. And today we feature our annual CFO panel, which is intended to be a great source of guidance for our CPA audience as they navigate their career paths and evaluate options for their continued growth. And it's been my pleasure to oversee this for most of those 10 years that we've been doing this. And so and each year continues to be more rewarding than the one before. And as we continue to find great folks to sit with us and talk with us about their careers and hopefully share information that's useful to our audience. Today's panel has excelled in the CFO role, although they've reached that position in very different ways and in very different industries. Their career paths to the role have shown a surprising number of commonalities in spite of that. And that includes their thought processes and career development and some of their keys to success. I'm really looking forward to today's discussion and the opportunity for them to share some of those insights with the audience. For today's discussion, I'll be speaking individually with each of the panelists, covering similar types of information relating to each of their career experiences first. And then following that, we'll have a general discussion among all the panelists with the audience Q&A at the conclusion. We want the audience to participate once again, so please submit your questions using the Q&A tab at the bottom of your screen. Now, let me give you a brief intro to this morning's panelists. Joining us today are Cherry Bekaert, currently partner and CEO of Veritas Fund Solutions, Jeff Owens, Clyde's Restaurant Group CFO and Head of Corporate Development, and David Mutrin, Maximus Chief Financial Officer. Leading off today will be Cherry Bekaert, CEO and partner of Veritas Fund Solutions, a leading provider of fund administration for private investment funds. Cherry has nearly 30 years of experience as a financial and operations leader, crossing over several industries. And we have our first polling question there. So if you want to go ahead and click on that. So she's crossed over a number of industries, including technology, hotels and resorts, venture capital, and fund administration. Cherry began her career at Deloitte before assuming the controller role at Condor Technology Solutions. Cherry next joined Maristar Hotels and Resorts as controller. In 2002, Cherry switched to a part-time role as Director of Corporate Finance for 3 years before returning to a full-time role as SVP and Treasurer of Interstate Hotels and Resorts, as it had by then become known. In 2013, Cherry was promoted to CFO at Interstate, a role she held for nearly 7 years. I should say that I served as CFO of Interstate's sister company during part of that time, so I personally had the great opportunity to appreciate Cherry's tremendous capabilities up close. After Interstate's acquisition in 2020, Kerry shifted gears and became CFO of Greenspring Associates, a venture capital firm in Baltimore. And after nearly a year, Greenspring was acquired by Stepstone Group, with Kerry transitioning and preparing to lead their newly carved out fund solutions business. Earlier this year, that business commenced operations as Viridis Fund Solutions, with Kerry as its CEO and partner. Kerry holds a BS degree in accounting from Virginia Tech and was previously a CPA. She is married, lives in Barnstown, Maryland, and has 3 daughters. Next up after Kerry will be Jeff Owens, who is CFO and Head of Development for Clyde's Restaurant Group, a position he has held for the last 29 years. Jeff started his career in DC as an Arthur Andersen auditor for 10 years. And once again, his clients included Host Hotels and Resorts, where I was corporate controller, and I was able to see up close how very capable Jeff is. In 1995, Jeff left Andersen to go to Clyde's Restaurant Group as CFO, and later also became a board member in 2001. Clyde's was already a well-known brand and first-class dining option, with 6 highly visible restaurants when Jeff joined. With the passing of Clyde's founder and CEO and the sale to Graham Holdings in 2019, Jeff stepped up his management involvement, adding the critical role of head of development. When COVID hit in 2020, Clyde's had to pivot heavily and adapt, which was a true test for Jeff and the entire management team. Clyde's is now fully back in growth mode, recently announcing the upcoming opening of 2 restaurants this year and next. Today, Clyde's has 14 restaurants, and revenues have more than quadrupled from the platform that Jeff joined in 1995. Jeff received a BS in accounting with highest distinction from Penn State University. He's married and lives in Northern Virginia. Jeff and his wife have 3 children, with the youngest still in college. And finally, our third panelist is David Mutrin, Chief Financial Officer of Maximus Corporation. Maximus is a large government contractor with about 50% of their business from federal health and civil agencies, and another 1/3 coming from state and local governments. Maximus operates call centers and performs other services primarily to support health-oriented customer requirements. After a brief stint at PwC, David began his corporate career in 2004 with SRA, then a leading locally based government contractor. David was promoted 6 times over the next 12 years, ultimately to the position of VP Finance and Treasury. Along the way, David was opportunistic and took a number of steps to broaden his skills and make himself more valuable, earning both an executive MBA from the Wharton School and taking additional credits to qualify to sit for and pass the CPA exam. A year after the sale of SRA, David left to join up with their former CFO at Maximus Corporation, taking the role of SVP and controller. Maximus, its CFO, and David each made a significant investment and placed a lot of trust in each other, with the stated intention of David becoming CFO upon his predecessor's retirement, which was still several years out. That commitment was, of course, based on David's performance, meriting the promotion. Needless to say, David more than met those performance thresholds and earned the title in 2021. Along the way, David has been deeply involved in the development of the company, being critical to the evaluation and integration of numerous successful acquisitions. David received a BS in Commerce in Finance from the University of Virginia, and as mentioned, later added an MBA from the Wharton School. David's married and lives in Northern Virginia. He and his wife have 5 children, ages 7 to 13. And now, so let's turn to a brief discussion, one-on-one with each of the panelists, starting with Kerry McIntyre. Let me remind the audience to submit any questions you have throughout the program, and we'll try to make sure the panelists get a chance to answer them. Kerry, great to have you here today.
Thank you, Don. It's great to be here.
And so let's just start out, if we could, maybe you could kind of introduce yourself to the group, talking about maybe a little bit about where you grew up, your education, some key career experiences that really stand out and kind of propelled your success, and a few things about yourself maybe that everybody doesn't know.
Sure. Thank you. It's great to be here. Yeah, you gave such a thorough introduction. I'm not sure what to add there, but yeah, I grew up in Maryland. I've lived in the northern DMV area my whole life, other than the brief college stint at Virginia Tech, but grew up here. I went to Virginia Tech with the idea of becoming an engineer, but switched over to accounting pretty quickly, realizing I wasn't thrilled with the engineering path. I did meet my husband there. I played tennis and he played baseball, and we were randomly drug tested on the same day, and that's where it all which, fun fact. So he also grew up in Maryland, and so we came back and you know, continued on here. So from Virginia Tech, I went into the audit world at Deloitte & Touche. I was there for, you know, in the McLean area. I was there for, yes, we did pass the drug test. I saw that question pop up. I worked primarily on government contracting and in the McLean office, and was close to being promoted to manager. I was there about 4.5 years when, you know, one of the managers that I had worked with before kind of called up and said, "Hey, I've got this opportunity." So I had to stop at that point and say, do I want to continue into audit, into manager kind of partner track, or do I want to do something different? And at that time, just the thought of going, either staying in audit or even working at a really big company within accounting, wasn't really kind of getting me going. So this was an entrepreneurial opportunities, and it was with somebody who knew me, and I felt comfortable taking it. So I was the 4th employee at this company called Condor, which was an IT services company. And we were a roll-up company. It was kind of an exciting thing. We were actually public, but I was the 4th person that they brought into the corporate office. And I was there about 3.5 years. We rolled up 8 companies, bought 6, and then it started to kind of go the other direction. There were a lot of challenges. It was in that Y2K time. And I learned a lot about what not to do, I would say, in that experience. But by the end of that, I started out as director of financial reporting and became controller. And at the end, I was kind of acting as CFO and doing just about everything to kind of keep the lights on. I stayed in touch with people at Deloitte throughout that, and over at where you were at, Don, at Maristar, there were quite a few Deloitte alums within that organization. So I kept in touch with them, and an opportunity came up at that point to be corporate controller. It was right after 9/11, so tough times for the hotel industry. But it was at that time, there was an opportunity to be corporate controller of the management company. And so I jumped on it, and it was really not knowing anything about the industry, but really based on relationships and trusting the people that I had worked with before and that I knew that I would enjoy working with. So I went over to that organization, and then quickly there was an M&A transaction. We merged with Interstate and became Interstate Hotels and Resorts. And at that time I was starting a family. So as you had mentioned, within a year of starting there, I kind of transitioned into a part-time role, so that I could, you know, just prioritize family at that time. So I had two of my 3 daughters within that 2.5 year period where I stepped back and stayed in finance. So that's when I transitioned from accounting to finance, and I was in an FP&A role at that point. And then as things happened, opportunities arose. Our treasurer left the organization, and so the CFO at that time asked me if I'd come back full-time and be treasurer. So that's when I kind of stepped back in, and that was, I think, roughly 2005. I became full-time treasurer of Interstate. We're a public company, and things evolved from there, just around, you know, the company had many transactions. And so that 8 years that I was treasurer, we were a public company. We became private. We were owned by 50% Chinese public company based in Shanghai on the Hong Kong exchange, and half a small private equity firm based in the US, which was very interesting and challenging. Throughout that time, I probably had 3 CFOs and 4 CEOs, various acquisitions, various changes in our structure. And in 2013, the opportunity arose for me to take over the CFO role. And that was something it wasn't something I knew I wanted to do the entire time that I was working, but as you kind of gain experience and start to learn to trust yourself, you start to see that you can do it. And so when the opportunity came, I took it, and was CFO there, and took us through additional changes in ownership structure with different PE firms. And ultimately we sold the company to a PE firm that owned our largest competitor based in Dallas, and we moved the headquarters to Dallas. At that time, I had 2 children in high school, 1 in elementary school, and I wasn't interested in moving my family, so I decided to take a break and then switched gears. And I'll thank Don for Don and his colleagues for bringing me into Greenspring back in 2020. So I decided at that time, like, okay, I want to try something different. Again, I guess I started in the hotel industry right after 9/11, and I exited the hotel industry during COVID. So my bookends of an 18-year tenure were tough times for the industry. So it wasn't hard to leave hotels at that time. It was tough to leave the company, but it wasn't hard to leave and decide to change gears. So I went over into financial services, which was brand new. I took a risk. And actually, this is the first time I've gone to a company where I did not know somebody that I had previously worked with. And, but I kind of just had a gut feeling about it and said, if I'm going to try something new, I'm going to do it now. And just went with my gut and started there as CFO. It was a much more operational role than strategic role. So I was just going to kind of see how it goes. And so I started there, and within a year, it's kind of the trend with me. Within a year, there was an acquisition when StepStone acquired us, and I was kind of brought into. They acquired Greenspring for their venture capital business. And slotted us into their PE asset class. So I was kind of slotting into a fund accounting group that was inside StepStone, but they traditionally outsource fund administration. So we said, let's do something. Let's spin this back office out into its own company. So that kept me very interested because it was something new. And I said, we want you to run this. So I had the fun opportunity to work on a strategic plan and then execute it to spin a company out of a company and become partner and CEO and own a company. So that's where I am January 1 of this year. So it's been quite a ride. And it's been exciting along the way, but a lot of people help you get to where you're going to be as you build your career, as you take those steps. You build relationships, and those tend to prove to be helpful throughout your career.
Yeah, that's a great overview, and lots of I don't know how many calendar years that was, but it's probably like time and a half that in.
Yes, when you kind of go back and recap it, you realize, wow, this feels like a counseling session.
Exactly. So you touched on a little bit, but maybe you could just go a little bit deeper talking about Veritas Fund Solutions and kind of how big are you? What do you really do? And how different was that than what you were doing before?
Yep. So Veritas Fund Solutions, again, it was kind of born out of an in-house fund accounting team that had been in existence for 20 years. So Greenspring was around for 20 years. It did outsource its accounting, its fund administration, where we do all the fund accounting and operations for the venture capital funds that Greenspring managed. They took it in-house because they wanted to control their own destiny and the quality of the work. They wanted to do that inside. But when we transitioned to StepStone, we were acquired by StepStone, their model was to outsource to fund administrators. So it's a company, it's a group and an organization that in some form or fashion has a lot of experience, 20 years worth of experience with a lot of tenure. So when we spun out in January, we spun out with kind of a pretty significant existing organization. We administer over $30 billion of assets. We have over 300 fund entities that we do the accounting and administration for. Before the spin out, I had probably 35 people in my organization. Today, I have over 60, just because it's growing and just the work.
Excuse me, we have another polling question there.
Yeah. So we have our largest client is StepStone. They are the organization that spun us out, but we are actually kind of a mini third-party admin while we were in-house. And so we took those clients with us too. So we have 7 other clients in addition to StepStone, and we're looking to grow. We kind of decided at the beginning of this year that we were focusing on stabilizing. Being outside the company is different than being inside the company. They're a public company, StepStone is, so there's SOX compliance and SOC compliance. There's all sorts of compliance that we have to adhere to and just make sure that we're delivering the service that they're expecting of us as an outside provider. So we've been very focused on that, and we're in the background turning our efforts, working on our marketing and, getting our name out there, branding and things like that. So, we started to kind of shift gears toward external growth just recently, and trying to turn it up a notch on that. But our goal is to grow starting within venture capital and PE, but then potentially moving over to other asset classes.
Yeah, well, it's a great story, and I guess the follow-on question is, you hadn't been there that long, and you got sold, and now you're asked to take on this new task. I mean,
yeah,
if you can give the audience a little flavor for, as the new kid, stepping in, how did you inspire enough confidence in these people? How did you get control of get your hands on the controls and inspire enough confidence that they said, no, we'll give you the car? Go ahead.
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, it was during COVID too, so it was interesting because you weren't in person. I think the reason that they brought me on without any experience into the role was that they were looking to do something potentially strategic as Greenspring. Maybe they wanted to IPO. There was always potential acquisition in the background. So they put me in kind of an operational role, knowing that there was hope that there would be something beyond that I would be able to lead them to. So they brought in a skill set that they didn't have in-house with me. So I think that was kind of the premise of my joining the firm. So that was there. So then when StepStone acquired us, it was just, they just trusted what they brought in. And then, obviously what I try to do and what I would recommend to anybody throughout their career is, I don't know, I'm sure a lot of finance people do this, but I have a huge fear of failure. So, I really try to focus in and get done what they hired me to do first and foremost, and just get that done at 110% and try to anticipate what my leaders need. And I found that if you do that, then opportunities arise. And that's what I feel like happened here. As I came in, I said, let me get my arms around this. Let me figure out what's going on and what they need from me, and try to achieve that. And that's all I did. I mean, it wasn't anything more than that. So,
well, it's a simple recipe, but a good recipe.
Yeah, I mean, it is simple, but
yeah, that's great. We touched on this briefly earlier. At Maristar, you took 3 years where you stepped back, or 2.5 years where you stepped back when you had your first two daughters, and which was, I should note, was not very common back then. And maybe you could, and you did share with me privately, but maybe you could share with me a little bit, kind of as you came back at a full-time job as treasurer of the company, big job. How did you feel? What were your thoughts and concerns kind of as you went to part-time, and then as you came back, and how did that work out for you? And what did you learn from that?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't comfortable to make that decision, but I just found that it's hard to be everything to everybody. You kind of got to be honest with yourself about what your priorities are, and that's a personal decision for everybody. So my husband and I wanted to have somebody home with our children in some way. So, but I also wanted to keep a foot in the door. I just personally wanted to continue to be engaged outside of that. So I made it work out so I could work part-time and not just completely exit, but yet still be the primary caregiver to the children when they were younger. And so I did that knowing that it might derail me a bit. And I was just kind of, but it is what it is. Life, this is my priority. So I made that decision, not knowing what would happen and not knowing if it would work out from a career perspective, but willing to accept that. And so we did that. And then when I had my second child, I even went further part-time, where it was only 2 days a week. But I kept working a little bit. And I just said, this is what I can give you at this time. And they took it. The company said, we'll take it. And so we worked it out. And then when this treasurer opportunity came up, again, it wasn't accounting, it was kind of moving into finance. I was very scared of failure of that. They believed in me. And again, I had to make a personal decision with my husband. I said, this opportunity's here. I don't know how often I'll get these. And we actually decided he would stay home for a while. And our attitude was, this feels right. We're going to try it. If it doesn't work out, we'll change it and just give it a try. So took that step, nervous. Didn't really know our head of business development, wasn't sure exactly what it meant to be treasurer, but knew that people trusted me. So I was going to trust them, trusting me more than I even trusted myself at that time. So I took that step. But again, we had to make some personal sacrifices and decisions for that. In order to allow me to give 110% to that treasurer role, we had to make some personal decisions to make that work. And you know, it just kept going and working that way. So that was kind of how that all went down.
That's great. That's a great lesson there, and kind of being true to your values, as well as having knowing your own value, and having confidence and faith that you're going to end up in a good place.
Yeah, I mean, I actually work with people. There's most of my organization, they're fairly young, new, growing young families, and I find that I'm speaking a lot to most generally women, but my employees who are struggling with that decision, and whether they're behind in their career if they work 4 days a week instead of 5 days a week. And I just encourage them to make the decision that's right for them at the time, and that careers just aren't linear. They don't have to be linear. Like, you know, hopefully we all have a long road and a long life, and decisions, you know, sometimes you take one step sideways and then you take a huge step forward and maybe another step back, and that's okay but stay true to yourself. So that's what, and you know, it took me going through it to realize that it was okay. At the time, I wasn't sure.
Yeah, that's a great lesson, because sometimes we tend to think, especially earlier in your career, it's the end of the world.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you know, what you realize is your career is going to take a lot of different twists and turns.
That's right.
So, anyhow, great scenario to walk through. Appreciate you sharing that.
Sure.
And then just one other question before we move over to Jeff. You mentioned you were, I think when we talked about it before, it was actually 5 CEOs.
Yeah.
And four other CFOs before you actually took the chair yourself. So that's a lot of dealing with a lot of different personalities, and I know a lot of them. So I know they were personalities,
right?
And so how hard was that and what did you have to do to adapt? This is important for somebody that's stepping into that role. You know,
right?
How do you adapt to the different, you know, especially in transitioning from one CEO to another, and to make that all work? What was the key for you?
I mean, you know, it was, as it's happening, it's you're kind of reeling and you're going, oh gosh, am I, you know? And actually the last one, when I was sitting CFO, the last CEO I had, I actually didn't know if I was going to make it. I didn't know. I said, I don't know if this guy, he's going to keep me. But most, with every single one of them, I just tried to do the best job that I could in the role that they had me in, but then help them succeed. So you have to be a little bit selfless and not think, oh, I'm going to do all the work and this person's going to get all the credit. Anticipate their needs, help them be successful. And what happens when you do that is then you become trusted by them, and it just naturally evolves. But you just have to kind of take it slow. Realize that every single person is different when they come into this role, and they're going to approach it differently, and there's probably going to be some changes. Don't fight every change, you know, pick your battles, but try, like, first and foremost, do the job that you're there to do as well as you can do it, and try to anticipate their needs before they might know they need them. And it's okay. And I was okay doing that in the background, and it ended up working out. I felt like I gained trust that way.
Yeah.
And as treasurer, you kind of gain access to the boardroom more so than when you're controller. So as treasurer, because I was working on FP&A and modeling and the go forward, I was there to see the questions that the board asked. And so I could start to say, okay, when I put this together, this is what it needs to look like. And I would do that for any one of them. So you just have to kind of accept that they're going to come in with their own ideas and personality and change, and probably make some changes, but that's okay. Most of the time, net, it's for the better.
So, I guess, it's not about you. It's about what you're trying to accomplish, and you don't want to be Dr. No all the time, but you got to be willing to say no.
Right. And I kind of realize I thrive on chaos and change. And so I was in a great place because it was, there was a lot of change in many ways there. So it keeps it like I worked for 5 companies within the 18 years I was there. So it's made it fun.
It was made for you. All right, we have another polling question here, so please take a second to grab that. And anyhow, Carrie, thank you. That's very helpful, and really appreciate it. And now we'll move over to Jeff Owens to learn a little bit more about Jeff and his career. Jeff, you want to pop up there on the screen? And there he is. Oh, we lost him. There he is.
All right.
Looks like he's ready for lunch. Okay. I love your background. Anyhow, so Jeff, thank you so much for being here today. Obviously, I've known you a long time, and your success has been great to watch. Please, if you could take a little bit of time to kind of talk about where you started out from, I guess in Western PA, and then how you got to where through your education and your early career, and then what your move to Clyde's, and then kind of what are some of the things that have propelled you along the way, if you would.
All right, great. So we are going to have a little pop-up question here on the side. If anybody wants to participate, if you could just name the Clyde's location that is in my background, we'll see who the first winner is for that contest. But I grew up in central Pennsylvania, a small coal mining town, Clearfield, and I went to Penn State. Clearfield was only about 45 miles from Penn State, and I grew up going to football games and whatnot, and it was kind of a different time then. Like when it was time to go to college, I mean, I just said, well, there wasn't any question. this is where I'm going to go, kind of thing. I only filled out one application because that was the only thing I really knew coming out of there. But so I graduated from Penn State and then interviewed with the big 8 accounting firms at the time, and took a job in DC with Arthur Anderson, and then I was in their audit group for 10 years, and spent most of my time on kind of larger public companies. Marriott was my largest client, so I did spend a ton of time there, and got to the point, after 10 years where I was ready to move on. It was a decision, probably a combination of, I wasn't really enthused about being an audit partner in the future, and I probably had some work-life balance issues that I was concerned about, and it just said, it was time for me to kind of start looking for my next move. And then turns out that I went to Clyde's, not thinking it was going to be a long-term thing, but I've been there now for nearly 30 years. So I know it's rare that, I've only had 2 jobs in my career. And I think that the stars have to really align for something like that to happen, which is why it's so rare to happen. But yeah,
in the history of this panel, you absolutely have the longest tenure and the smallest number of jobs of any CFO.
Right. Yeah. But it's funny. I was interviewing at the time when I was looking for a job. I was thinking, well, I have experience with public companies and SEC reporting and things like that, and so I was kind of like going down that road. I think, well, this is kind of what I know. And I had heard about the job. Clyde's was a client of the firm. They weren't my client, but I had heard about this job, and just said, it might be interesting or fun to talk to these folks or whatever. And I went in there not really thinking, that it was going to amount to something, but I ended up getting really excited about it, and kind of excited about it's kind of a sexy business. I was always impressed with Clyde's, and that's what kind of got me in there to the start. And I was thinking, hey, this will be fun to do for a while. But it kind of worked out for me that turned into a good career.
Yeah.
And I'm looking to see if anybody's answered the question.
We've got a couple people who weighed
Oh,
in on that.
okay. It looks like Brandy Thorne came in at 847. Broadlands,
All right.
Tower Oaks. Yeah,
There
it's
you
not
go.
Tower Oaks. It's not Tower Oaks. It's Willow Creek Farm. But Brandon Thorne is the winner.
All
It's
right.
interesting. This picture. This is the main bar out at, and it's in Ashburn. It's in the Broadlands. It's out in Loudoun County. This is the main bar, and you can see this stuff kind of hanging in the room. It's the theme in there is horse-drawn vehicles. So it's all carriages and sleighs that are hanging throughout this room. We built this location it opened in December of 2006. And I remember that summer, we went up to this big auction in Hershey. They had this auction once a year of carriages and sleighs. I mean, that's specifically what it is. We went up there with the company checkbook in hand and pretty much bought out the entire auction so that we could decorate the restaurant.
Figure out how to get it back.
But
Interesting. Yeah. That's
so
we'll get back to that in a second. But
back to Clyde's.
yeah, we'll get back to that question because I actually I have a question about that. I want to hit you with in a second. But why don't you maybe you can just kind of hit a couple. What are some of the key milestones that you kind of like as you went along? All of a sudden, it's like obviously you joined there. You became a board member. I don't know if there was anything that that all of a sudden they woke up one morning and said, "My God, we have Jeff here sitting in our midst, and we should make him a board member," or did it just kind of happen over time, and then along the way, obviously you've had some other ups and downs or whatever, but
Yeah,
anything there that stands out particularly that would be useful to our group?
So I think the thing, when I just to go back to, it was 1995 when I joined the company, and a very small corporate team. There are about a dozen of us there, and that kind of gave me the opportunity to really kind of branch out and start to wear a lot of hats with that size of an organization. And at the time, I was the only position, like the CFO was the only person who really did not come up through the operations side, come up through the restaurants. Think about the other corporate positions. We had some culinary positions, and we had purchasing and controller and training and marketing. All those positions were folks that maybe started as a waiter or a host or and worked up through as a restaurant manager, and then came up to a corporate role. It was really appealing to me to kind of be, and maybe I didn't realize it, but that was kind of that smaller kind of a structure really appealed to me. The restaurant business it's so straightforward. You think about every day we have a chance to exceed people's expectations. We got 10,000 people a day that we're feeding, right? And every day we have a chance to win them over and blow them away with great food and great service, or not. And it's like as you make adjustments, as you kind of work on things, you get immediate feedback. I mean, because whether it be seeing the repeat business grow, seeing that the head counts grow every day, every week or whatnot, it's gratifying, and I kind of like that instant feedback aspect of it.
Yeah, no, that's great. Why don't you just kind of fill us in a little bit on where is Clyde's today? I mean, in terms of what you're doing. I know you have a couple of new restaurants coming.
So and I do want to mention, you had asked about when I joined the board. I mean, it was really 9/11. That was like a real milestone for the company, because our founder passed away in August, and then 9/11 happened in September. And so the company at the time, prior to that, it was just the two founders. They were the board, they were the owners. It was it was their partnership. So that was a simple kind of structure. And when the founder passed away, and some of his family members, you know, basically started to get involved in terms of being on the board. You know, they chose 3, you know, management people from the company to be on the board, you know, to be, you know, basically balancing out the family members who were not involved in the business. And so we kind of formed that board and went forward from there. And then fast forwarding to 2019, you know, we continued to grow and you know, open a new restaurant every, you know, probably every 4 or 5 years. You know, it wasn't, you know, it's not like we're opening multiple locations until now. But in 2019, you know, and this started in 18, we did a sales process for the company. Like you know, the founding families were ready to cash out, and so we brought in an investment banking group, and we did a formal, you know, kind of a search, worldwide search, you know, and a lot of interest and meetings with potential bidders. You know, kind of went through that process during 2018 and into 2019. And I have to say, we were very fortunate to be acquired by Graham Holdings in the summer of 2019. You know, you look at the different types of buyers that were coming on the scene, you know, a lot of strategic acquisitions, which would have just been another restaurant company like folding these restaurants into their group. And in that situation, it would have most certainly meant most of the corporate team would have been, you know, let go with a strategic buyer. But Graham was, you know, Graham is, you know, they're local. It's the, you know, the family that used to own the Washington Post, and now they're, you know, very well diversified holding company headquartered in Virginia, and you know, so they bought us. It's a long-term investment for them, and you know, they really collaborate well with the management team, and we you know, we have some great plans together. So, and now we have, you know, we just opened a new restaurant in Baltimore, and we have 2 more under construction. One in Union Market in DC is going to open next month, and then the other one is in Reston that will open next year. And it's this one in Reston. Oh, I'll tell you, the one in Baltimore is called Rye Street Tavern, and it's on the waterfront in Baltimore Peninsula, right next to the Sagamore Distillery, and just a spectacular location. We opened in July. The one in Union Market is a seafood concept called Cordelia Fish Bar. And the cool thing about that is it's going to, all the seafood is going to be cooked on charcoal or raw, but it's, you know, we have charcoal ovens and charcoal grills, and we're set to open in the middle of November. And the location in Reston next year is going to be our first spin-off of the old Ebbett Grill at Reston Station. It's going to be called Ebbett House, which interestingly is the original name of the old Ebbett Grill. Dates back to 1856. It was a boarding house, a bed and breakfast, no, boarding house in DC, and so it's going to be like a suburban version of the old Ebbett Grill. We're really excited about that because we've never really expanded the old Ebbett, which is our, you know, our busiest and, you know, probably most successful location.
Well, I'm sure the Restonites will be happy to see your return to the market there.
Yeah. Yes.
And so actually, and I had a question here for you, and one of our audience members had the same question. So I'll just hit it right now. You know, you've been the CFO there for 29 years, which is very unusual. You know, the average tenure for a CFO is something like 2.5 years. So you've vastly exceeded that. And the question, you know, so how have you made that work? And, you know, kind of how do you, and drilling down on that a little bit, how do you maintain the excitement over that time period? Because you're still obviously very enthusiastic about what you do and what the company does, and how have you kept your enthusiasm, and also how do you it's, you know, it's hard to, you know, maintain those great working relationships with people over such a long time period. And, when you don't always agree. So, and has that changed at all since you became the head? You also took on the head of development title.
Yeah, it's that's the thing that I think is really rare, because you think of all the, the things that are important to you in your career. One of which is being, always being developing and always learning new things. There's a lot of other things, but it's, your, relationships, being excited about the work you do, enjoying the people that you're with, your compensation, you just think through of all the reasons that you would make a move in your career. A lot of times it's because you don't have a good relationship with your boss, or you have a bad boss. They say that's a real common reason you don't leave leave your job as you leave your boss, but so, all that stuff, really has to line up. And I've been fortunate because, I kind of grew and developed with the company, and had a chance to, do a lot of, working on a lot of transactions, interesting transactions, and, the restaurant trade associations. I was chairman of the Maryland Restaurant Association, and, doing a lot of lobbying type activity with both the state and the county on local levels. Very active in that. And getting to run the sale process was really great. And now I'm kind of back in the public company world with SOX compliance, and because Graham is publicly traded, so I kind of got back to that just most recently. But the corporate development piece is really what's been the most exciting part for me most recently. And you think about your mentors, and I was in a position where I didn't really have a handy kind of finance accounting type mentor available to me where I was. I had to use my networking with my accounting firm and fellow colleagues to build that piece. But a great mentor relationship I had over the years was the attorney that he always negotiated the leases for the company, and was really a great deal maker. And so I, with each restaurant, I just at his side, I was able to kind of, learn about, how to really look at a deal and analyze a deal structure and be able to negotiate and come to terms, and then take that to a lease and eventually to a restaurant. Like, that was a key mentor relationship for me to kind of develop that skill set. And, I'm sure that's a reason that I was, able to really keep my interest in doing this, for so long, is kind of being involved in that.
Yeah.
Does that kind of answer what?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, I think it's, part of it is you find different ways that you can add value, and you be willing to learn and listen and understand that, things aren't necessarily going to get handed to you. You have to go out and do some of the spade work to earn the opportunities too. So
yeah, I really got to say, it's important to to understand that you're really in charge of your.
We got a poll here too.
And if you're lacking in some area, like, you have to go after it, find a mentor, and a lot of times good leaders are concerned about their own people, making sure that they have a good career path, and that they have good mentoring, and they're basically looking out for their people, but they neglect to think about themselves, and I think that that's something important, is to make sure you go after, really what you need.
Yeah, no, that's, and so Jeff, you have neglected to share with the group here that you are actually the member of a band. And so I just wondered if you could, that's hard. That's hard to continue for this amount of time. And
Right.
will we be seeing you at the Hamilton anytime soon?
Yeah, no, we've played at the Hamilton. I have, had to find something to exercise the other side of my brain, I guess the left side or whatever like that. But when my kids were young, 20 years ago, I jumped in. They were taking piano lessons and guitar lessons and things like that, and I jumped into it with them with the saxophone. And so now I'm in a little cover band in Arlington, And last year we played 42 shows. So we have a pretty active schedule. But
Nice.
Name
it's
of the
fun,
band?
it's great.
Follow you? You want to divulge
What's that?
that? What's the name of the band? So anybody.
The band is called Collective.
Okay.
And so we're on Facebook, Instagram. We have a website, Collective DC Band. So
All right. Very good. All right. Well, everybody now has that on their list, and you'll have a bunch of new fans out there looking for you. So excellent. Well, listen, thanks, Jeff. That was great insight. Really appreciate it. And now let's turn over to David Mutrin. There he is. Now we put you on ice all this time, David. So you're I know you're like the solid kicker that can come in and make it anyhow. So anyhow, so thanks so much again for being here with us today. And maybe you could just the same kind of basic starting out point. Tell us a little bit. Just tell us about kind of your growing up and family and education and some of the key things in your career that, as you look back on it, that really kind of made a difference for you, and a few things about yourself that we don't know, maybe.
All right, happy to. Thank you for having me. And your intro was very comprehensive before, so thank you. So I thought maybe I could focus on just some of the key points along the journey that I think might be useful for the group to hear about. Like Carrie, I've been living in the DC area my whole life. I was born in Washington, DC. I grew up in Maryland, and I went to college and have settled in Virginia. So I've been in all three parts of the DMV. And for better or worse, my whole career has been in government contracting, not exactly by design. I joined PwC out of college, and I was in a consulting portion of PwC, and the first project they put me on was a government contract. So I was direct billable. Interesting, the other two speakers also mentioned 9/11 as part of their career. For me, 9/11 was my first assignment. The Department of Justice was running the Victims Compensation Fund for victims of the September 11th attacks. And my job with PwC was a wrongful death adjudicator, which meant that I helped model out the financial payments that the victims' families would be paid through that fund. So really interesting and meaningful project. Certainly got me interested in kind of the mission of government and helping citizens along the way. As that project wrapped up, kind of very fortunate timing, I heard of an opportunity at SRA, and while I wasn't all that interested in leaving PwC because of anything about PwC, I decided to take the risk. I think that was a bit of a risky decision. I was about 1.5 years in at PwC, and moving from kind of a large firm with kind of a career path that you could easily see, next 2 or 3 steps along in the career, to a relatively smaller company, albeit one with a great reputation. I know some of my SRA alumni are on the call. I flipped through the guest list, so shout out to them. SRA had just gone public about 1 year before I joined, and they were building out an FP&A team. So I worked closely there with the CFO, Steve Hughes. And I think pretty early on in my time there, the first couple of years, I think working closely with him, I came to aspire to achieving that role at some point in my career. So I had a great number of opportunities at SRA. I was there 12 years. And I, as you said, I guess 6 different roles. I hadn't counted, but I was given a number of the opportunities along the way. I think I probably wasn't totally qualified for, but had built enough of a reputation internally that they took the chance on me, and I'm happy to have been there. I also completed my executive MBA and CPA along the way, as you said. One thing I thought I'd mention here, especially towards the end of my time at SRA, as I aspired to the CFO role, I did answer the phone as recruiters called from time to time. And more than once, I went through CFO recruitment processes and came in second place. And each time that happened, they ended up giving the role to someone who had already been a sitting CFO. So basically it was a decision between a first-time CFO and a experienced CFO. And I don't blame the boards and the CEOs of those companies at all. But for me, as I thought about my own career, I began thinking that I should try to seek an opportunity where I could be promoted into the role, which is what ended up happening.
Yeah.
So SRA went through a transaction, became CSRA. About a year later, I got a call from Rick Nato, another CFO and boss of mine at SRA, had moved a few years earlier to Maximus, and told me they were recruiting for a controller, and more so that he felt confident that they could use a leading candidate to be his successor when he was planning to retire 5 years later. So I decided to go for that. And thankfully, even again, maybe I felt a little unqualified to be a controller, having spent most of my time in finance. I thought the controller role itself would be a great experience for me to learn, and even more so that I might have a chance to be a successor candidate for CFO. So then it was, 5 years was a bit of a long time. You maybe ideally want 2 or 3 years to be told situation. But I'd say I learned a lot, number one, and got more confidence along the way. I think about 3.5 years into the 5 years, I was fairly confident that it was actually going to happen. And the company announced the transition almost a year before it became effective. So essentially 4 years in, they announced that Rick would be retiring and I would be taking over as CFO. So maybe I'll pause there.
Okay, no, which is great input. It's interesting. Actually, usually we have the discussion about going from being an accountant to being accepted as a broader CFO because you're gaining the finance skill. You kind of went the other way on that, which is credit to you for putting in the effort to make that happen. Can you just give it? I gave a little blurb about Maximus, but is there anything about Maximus that that I missed, or that you want to make sure the audience knows? It's a great company. You've done a lot of acquisitions, and you're almost 5 billion of revenue, and well.
Yeah, we're breaking through 5 billion this year, which is a good milestone. We're also about to hit our 50th anniversary. So Maximus is an old company.
Wow.
We've been public for over 20 years. The relatively unknown, I think, in kind of the DC area, in part maybe our DC area employee footprint is relatively small, and we have a large employee footprint across the country and in many other countries as well. And as you said, we tend to support health and civilian agencies, with about half federal, a third state and local, and the rest international governments. Very health oriented, including we employ a number of doctors and nurses that complete health assessments and that sort of thing.
Okay, great. And I think you pretty well covered getting your first CFO title, but we'll kind of so you started out in government contracting, and I thought you had a great perspective on kind of how that appealed to you. Have you ever along the way considered maybe I'll do something else?
No, I think the answer is no for a couple of reasons. So yeah, as I said, maybe I'm not sure if I found GovCon or if GovCon found me. But I did grow up in the area. My wife did as well. And we met in the area. So we were both pretty confident we wanted to live here long term. And I think very practically, I said to myself, probably with the decision to join SRA, that establishing myself in this industry was probably a pretty safe bet that I would have future career opportunities continue on in this region. So I think there was a practical component to that.
Yeah.
But then, as I said as well, I think the mission of government contractors is something that's appealed to me. Certainly at SRA and at Maximus, both companies were very committed to serving customers well and really serving the American public well as a result, and helping the government achieve its mission. So it is great to be in an industry where you can feel good about what you're delivering.
Yeah, that's great. And we have a lot of I'm sure we have a lot of government contracting folks on on the call today, and so I'm sure they're heartened to hear your words and and to see your success. You mentioned in our conversation when you and I talked about in your time at SRA that you took on a number of different roles. I think 6 promotions in 12 years, and several of them, I think 1 or 2 of them were opportunistic, I think is the word you used. And so I wondered, which I thought was an interesting perspective, and I thought maybe you could share that with the audience, kind of some that opportunistic opportunity that you took, and maybe some thoughts you might have on how they should look at being opportunistic within their careers with their companies they're with.
Yeah. I recall I had a soccer coach when I was young who used to always quote that. I think it's like a Roman saying that luck is when preparation meets opportunity. So that kind of comes to mind, that be prepared to take opportunities as they arise. One that I point to as being a really meaningful transition in my career was, I guess it was about 5 years into my time at SRA. The role of Director of Investor Relations came open, and I had been doing pretty much all FP&A treasury type work before that. And I decided to throw my hat in. I was pretty early in my career, and they decided to give it to me, which was great. And little bit outside my comfort zone, like many finance and accounting people, pretty kind of introverted, and the thought of being on the phone all day with investors and presenting at conferences and all the rest, but it really exposed me to SRA at large and representing the company to shareholders. I think it ended up being a really important consideration when I was considered for CFO roles down the line, that I had that experience as well. So I think I knew I didn't want to do it forever, but that was a really great experience. And as I think about why they trusted me with that role, maybe it gets to kind of a tenure question, which is I've been very fortunate to have pretty long tenures, 12 years at SRA and now 8 years already at Maximus. That's, as Jeff said, that it's probably a bit of luck there. For me, it's been 2 great companies with a number of great bosses over the years. I think when you do have the privilege of being in a company for a long period of time, it presents opportunities along the way where, unlike public accounting, where you can depend on a promotion or at least expect to be considered for one every 3 years.
Yeah.
Corporate roles are a little bit different, smaller teams, and that's where the opportunism comes in, I would say, and being flexible and willing to take a stretch role when one might be available, I think is very important. Maybe another way of saying it, there is an element of kind of unpredictability, maybe luck, you could say, being prepared to take advantage of opportunities. But I think anyone who looks back at their career can probably point to numerous occasions where I was saying I was in the right place at the right time. So how do you define how that comes to be?
Well, some of it is what you do with it. So kudos to you for making a success of those opportunities. So that's a great advice for the group, though. You followed, as you mentioned, Rick Nato, obviously a good friend of mine as well. I think highly of, and as the CFO there at Maximus, and that probably required a lot of trust and commitment from both sides. You're taking a lot on faith that I'm going to do the things I know I can do, and they're going to. It's going to work out the way, but yeah, and you had other players that were weighing in on this, the board members and people like that that weren't necessarily part of your hiring process per se, and then it was about 4 years, I guess, is the process. But so how did you evaluate along the way? Is this working the way we said it would, and am I on track, and or is this, as nobody's mind has changed? How did you manage that communication? We have another poll question up too, by the way.
Yeah. No simple answer to your question, I would say. First of all, I think, as I said, kind of joining as controller in its own right, I felt like was a great step in my career. And I was learning a lot and gaining new experiences and maybe filling out my resume with more accounting oriented work than finance. There was definitely probably a year right in the middle where there was some uncertainty. But I think in short, I just kept working hard and tried not to focus too much on it. I wasn't all that interested in exploring anything externally given the circumstances, and decided just to keep working. And from time to time, I'd press a little on, the CFO or the CEO. How are things looking? Anything I should be worried about? And then, but I think what was great about a transition is, Rick and I together really built the finance and accounting team over that period of time. So when it came to the transition, I'd say the team was pretty excited about it, or at least I like to think they were. And I was very close already with the key leaders, and made for a great smooth transition.
Yeah, no, that's great. And it's like I say, interesting scenario, but it speaks to kind of anybody I think out there in the marketplace, in our audience here, that having good channels of communication with those around you and being able to and developing trust is always a good place to be, and as you develop, as your career develops. With that, I think everyone will agree we've had some fantastic input from each of the panelists. I'd like to bring everyone up on the screen now, and we'll have a group discussion. And once again, I'll ask some questions, but I'll also be keeping an eye out for questions from the audience. So, audience members, if you could, this is a tremendous opportunity to get great advice from a panel that's very knowledgeable, and so it's a rare opportunity. So please weigh in. Look forward to getting questions from you. Having said that, there's a couple things that when we talked as a group and when we talked individually that came up. And so in terms of the success of your career, maybe you could comment on kind of the importance in your advancement of, and not necessarily in this order, or not have to hit all of them, but what's been most important to you: mentors, work ethic, networking, deep skills, technology and knowledge of technology, any of those things. Carrie, since you've been sitting idle for the longest time, we'll go back to you and let you start that one off.
Yeah, thanks. I think for me personally, it was more about work ethic and relationships / mentors, if you will, kind of continuing the opportunities that came to me. I had to learn on the job, so that the deep technical expertise wasn't as important for me to get that next step. It was my ability to learn, and those who mentored me and knew me trusted that. Again, probably before I trusted that in myself. But I think because of the work ethic, and that's why they trusted that, because they saw what you could do. So for me, it was more about that kind of consistently throughout my career.
Great feedback. Jeff?
Yeah, I mean, very similar to what Carrie's saying. I feel like it's, kind of having a style of really transparent communication and really keeping in touch with everybody around you, collaborating, being responsive. You don't want to be a CFO that's kind of a reputation of being like in an ivory tower, and maybe they'll respond to me, maybe they won't, kind of thing. It's it's really being engaged, and certain times, I mean, it can be demanding, and you have to be ready to kind of step up and do that when the job calls for it, and really demonstrate that work ethic piece of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely. David, anything you want to add there?
Yeah, I think I have very similar thoughts. You know, just showing up every day and exceeding expectations is kind of the first and foremost. It's nothing, it's pretty simple, but I think that's very important. I guess a couple other thoughts I have. I'm a firm believer in the kind of doing well by doing good. And I think that works for companies as well as for individuals, and, you know, being good to other people. I think soft skills really play a big part in you know, anyone's career, and treating people with respect, treating them well. And then maybe one last thought would be the tension between kind of the short term and the long term. I think that you know, focusing on the long term in one's own career is important. I think the kind of the urgent versus the important is something that factors into how we perform in our jobs. And then even from kind of an ethical standpoint, I think even though we live in the short term, there can sometimes be a kind of a do something that's convenient versus doing the right thing for the long term. And just maintaining a long-term perspective with patience, I think, is important as a leader and influence career.
No, that's great. And I think each of you mentioned, mentors. Obviously that's been a big part of your careers too. I wouldn't want that to be lost on the audience here today. That the question is, sometimes they find you, and sometimes you find them. And but I guess I guess anybody have any thoughts on that or whatever in terms of how do you develop those relationships? And David, you want to we'll flip it around here.
I don't think I've really quite had a formal kind of you're my mentor, I'm your mentee relationship. I think my three primary mentors have been the CFOs that I've worked with along the way: Steve Hughes, and then Dave Keffer, and Rick Nato, who was twice my CFO boss. All three of whom I learned a lot from, and certainly looked up to, and they looked out for me as well throughout various stages of my career. It's also nice, I guess, to have some outside people that you can trust, that are kind of outside your industry even, or outside your the day-to-day, that you can be honest with, whether that's friends and peers that might have good advice, or parents and relatives and that sort of thing.
Great point. It's interesting. I had a longtime member of what I do now, recruiting and staffing, Ron Saul, who was a former CFO that was actually became a mentor to me, and I think Joe as well, that we could go to and just talk to about when something that you were dealing with, and kind of off the record, just not part of my job environment, but but it was good to have that. Jeff, anything you'd like to add there? Or?
Yeah, I mean, I had one great mentor at Arthur Andersen. It was the partner that recruited me on campus and hired me, and he really kind of watched over what I was getting involved in and the jobs I was being assigned to, and kind of steered me and advised me, and really kind of got me to a good point there. And then from the Clyde standpoint, my mentor relationship at Clyde's were really me learning the restaurant business, and the culinary and guest experience type stuff, and then I mentioned my attorney friend that really got me teed up for success in deal making, and site selection and lease negotiations and things like that. And then I also again on the outside, I had the trade association relationships, and my accounting firm. So I mean, it was I kind of had to go out and find some of that stuff, because it wasn't really in my organization. Yeah.
Yep. No, that's an interesting point. Carrie?
Yeah, I think mentor, it's such a specific word, but it's really, to me, just relationships that have evolved. And I'd say the first one probably was similar to you, Jeff. It was the partner. It wasn't a partner, but it was the manager that came to Virginia Tech and recruited me. And there was, you just gel with people. And that's kind of what led me to go to Deloitte. And then when I was at Deloitte, you meet more people, and you just, I feel like when you kind of go through battles with people in your organization, you kind of come out of that, comes relationships that last for a long time, when you kind of go through the war together and you come out on the other side, and then they trust you, and then you trust them, and they might exit the company. Many people that I would call a friend or a mentor are now outside of the company where I am, but I think of them in certain situations or might lean on them. And so it's just a natural evolution of that versus for me personally, seeking that out. But what I have tried to do is pass that down as I step more into leadership roles, recognize when somebody might need mentorship and lean into that as much as I can. If I see somebody just getting twisted up about something and I'm looking at it going, if they just take, just if I can talk to them about like a different perspective, or that longer term perspective, they're really kind of focused too short term. So now I feel like it's up to me in this spot to work, to look for those people that might need a mentor and just kind of continue it in that direction, which is fun.
Yeah.
It's kind of nice to be in that spot.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I think, David, that's consistent with your doing well by doing good. And I think that's it's a lesson for everyone. And I think it's actually very rewarding. And I think you do actually learn from it too. So, well, that is excellent feedback on that. Hopefully everyone takes that to heart. I think everyone's mentioned, actually, you interviewed for a couple CFO slots, didn't necessarily get them. Same here. So we're all in the same club, but maybe we could start out with talking about kind of how do you decide when should I be looking? And, and I think for the folks in the audience, maybe there's a little bit more of a tendency today to be a little less patient, perhaps. I'll say, and I may be wrong on that, but I'll go out there on that. So the question is, do you, how patient should you be? And, if you're, and what's, am I being just a good loyal soldier and I'm going to be rewarded, or am I going to, when is the right time to stick your head out and kind of say, out of the foxhole and say, hey, maybe there's something else I should be doing out there. And then as you had these opportunities and maybe it didn't work out, the interview didn't work out the first time, what'd you learn from that? And how did you circulate that back in to the next time around? David, you want to take that one, or?
Sure. I think I touched on maybe some of this in my opening intro. I think I've been very fortunate to have some long tenures, and I would typically advocate for that if you're in a good company that and you have a good manager, maybe even more importantly, I think it does pay off if you can find a situation. In my example, I felt like I was sometimes given roles that were, maybe I would not have qualified for if I just had sent a resume in for that role. I'll put it that way, kind of stretch roles. But on the other hand, there's definitely less of a stigma now than there used to be for shorter tenures. And I think if anyone has a bad or toxic work environment or manager, you should absolutely not stay years and years out of a sense of loyalty in that situation. So I think it like anything, it depends on circumstances.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah. So, what is it, Jeff? Did you say the manager or somebody said that you're not necessarily tied? You're tied to your manager too, to a certain extent there, and I think that was an interesting point. Jeff, do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, I mean, I really don't have, over the years, I never really got serious about taking another job somewhere else. I mean,
there's nobody from Clyde's on the call here today.
I don't think so. I don't think I can see the whole list of who's on here, but
maybe when you were at Arthur Andersen, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm gonna have to pass this over to Carrie.
Right.
Yeah, there's a poll question. I'll say it for you, Don.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Somebody was Lord.
Yeah, I would say there's one point in my career in the interstate days when there was a lot of change with leadership and ownership, where our CFO had left, and we were a new, they were on a search for a new CEO also, because our CEO was retiring. And they kind of entertained myself and two of my peers. They created the office of the CFO with the three of us while they were looking outside for a CFO, but also considering us. And so I really hadn't, it's not like I was like, I should be the next CFO. It was just kind of, then it got in my head a little bit. They chose somebody outside the organization to come in. And so at that point, I said, I'm going to go see what's out there, because I felt snubbed, I guess, to be honest with you. I just felt, I was like, hey, well, although I'm sure in my heart of hearts, I knew I wasn't actually ready. So I went and I tested the waters, and I got really close on something that really crushed me that I didn't get it, but I thought I was getting it, and I got a call that I didn't. And so I had to kind of just say, what am I doing? I'm not sure what's going on inside the company. I just got passed up for something I was really excited about. And the CEO at the time that was on his way out, he came to my office and he said, you're gonna do what you do. You're gonna keep your head down. You're gonna perform the way you perform. I know. And he somehow had known I was out looking. So it was like this moment where it irritated me. It was like a dad saying something to you that you don't want to hear. And so I just said, I'm going to see how this goes. I got two new people to work with, and I'm going to go for it. And, if something else pops up, I'll entertain it, but I'm not going to go on a massive search to leave. I'm going to see, because this could be great at the end of the day. Could be great. Two new people. And so I've learned, I have actually learned from every single CFO and CEO that I've had. I've taken something positive from them and brought it with me, which is really, really cool. And I think if you're in that moment, if there's boxes that you have that you need to check, and if they still check, so it's like, do I have opportunities to advance? At that moment in time, obviously the door was shut, but there was so much change at this company that you just never knew. Am I continuing to learn? Do I enjoy generally who I work with, whether it's them, my peers, the people who work for me, and am I fairly compensated? Like, you have these boxes, you prioritize them. If they still check and you're going to work with a positive attitude, it's a good reason to stay. But there are moments where I've had to, I've had difficult decisions to make or question that.
I think you raised a good point there. It's important to be learning and gaining skills and gaining capabilities or whatever. If that's happening, you can be a little more patient sometimes.
Right.
And just kind of following up on that, as employers, how do you look at tenure when you evaluate employees? Not necessarily every job isn't the life experience, but what are your thoughts on that? Cherry, you want to just follow up?
Yeah,
on that?
It does raise questions if you see frequent hopping. So I do look for some tenure. Having said that, we are generally hiring people at a fund accountant level who might have 1 or 2 years of public accounting experience, or, might even coming right out of college. But we like to grow those within, we like to, promote to manager. But if we happen to go look for a manager, I would want somebody that stayed with an organization for some period of time and wasn't hopping around. You're definitely going to be kind of asking questions in the process to understand what was behind that. There could be valid reasons, so you just have, I would want to dig in if I saw that on a resume. So I think tenure is a good thing when you're looking to hire somebody generally. Yeah.
Jeff?
Yeah, I mean, this
is a tenured member of our.
Yeah, this isn't exactly the question, but it's kind of adjacent. The interesting thing about the restaurant business is, we kind of have the franchise on somebody's first job. I mean, there's so many people that was their first job, and we're teaching people. I'm not talking about finance jobs. I'm talking about, we have 2,000 employees, and turnover can be 60, 70, 80% a year. Some years even 100%. So we're hiring and training 2,000 people every year, and it's the kind of thing where somebody, I'm between jobs. I'm going to go work at the restaurant. I'm only going to stay for a few months. It's just for the summer. It's just for the semester. or it can be a great career. It's, you know, it's kind of like hard work is recognized and rewarded, and you can advance up, you know, all the way to the executive levels, you know, just starting out as a, you know, hourly employee. So it's, you know, that's another great thing I think that's appealing to me about the business, and semi-relevant to the point you're talking about. So
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
David, how about you? You got a big
I-
team there. Yeah.
I'd agree with them. I mean, if you meet someone who's had, you know, 5 successive, you know, under a year long tenures, that kind of raises a red flag that you want to understand for sure. I think if there's, you know, 2 5-year stints with a 1 year in between, that's a little less. So I think people should be open about their reasons for their career moves along the way.
Yeah, I would say it's nice to see somebody in a resume, somebody that's at least planted their flag somewhere along the way and really dug in and invested. You know, it doesn't have to be every job, you know, because sometimes it just doesn't work out. But you know, and nothing wrong with realizing that and moving on. But anyway, great feedback for the audience, I'm sure. One of the question from the audience, which I think is certainly relevant, is for each of you, you know, the most significant change that you had to deal with in becoming a CFO. What was the biggest thing that you had to overcome? And Jeff, I'm gonna let you think about it for a minute since it was a long time ago. But Carrie, why don't you go ahead and lead off with that?
You know, it's hard as being treasurer for the 8 years before that, and kind of sitting right alongside the CFO made that transition a lot easier for me personally. I think just being the one responsible and really getting the calls from the PE sponsors, or actually the ones sitting in the boardroom, and you know, you're not passing information to the CFO, you're that person, and trying to think ahead and be as strategic as possible. It's just kind of that moment where you realize it's on you. And again, because of the relationships that I was able to build within the organization, my CEO, people, they want you to succeed, right? So I'd say you lean into those relationships and ask questions. You don't, you know, don't be afraid to ask questions, even as CFO. Don't be afraid to lean on resources and go get the answers, because you don't have all the answers. So I'd say that the transition and realizing that that's still okay to do that, and you should do that, and it's a responsibility of yours to do that, is important. And so that, you know, there's nothing to hide behind at that point. But, you know, so I think it's just kind of this realizing that you own it a bit more. But again, because of the treasurer was coming almost like a mini CFO at times, it wasn't as much of a transition as it might be other places.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah. How about you?
That for me?
Yeah, that's for you.
Yeah. I like Carrie. I think I was fortunate to have a kind of a close seat to the role before I moved into it. Just a couple observations I'd put out. First, it's all about the team. I mean, having a strong team is just so important to being successful in any role. The old I guess it was good to great, get the right people on the bus. So I'm very thankful for my team, my finance and accounting team, and kind of horizontally the rest of the leadership team. It's just critical to have strong relationships and trusted relationships, and you know, set the team up for success that way. I mean, maybe the other, not so much a surprise, but I think just in transparency, it can be very stressful being the CFO. I think I've found that I need to check myself at times if I feel like just the ups and downs of any business. It's easy to kind of overplay your role that, oh, well, it's on me to explain this to investors or to the board. And again, keeping kind of a long-term versus short-term perspective, maybe, and keeping myself in check there has been something to continue doing.
No, that's really great perspective. Another polling question here. And Jeff, Jeff, I mean, like, for instance, you went cold from public accounting to a CFO role. I mean, it had to be a little bit of a,
Yeah, it was a
a
huge,
jolt.
it was a huge change. I mean, and I think, looking back, the thing that stands out to me the most is, from the public accounting environment to being like, you're with this totally different group, in this business that, they just have, they're being pulled in so many directions and different things going on, that you're like the one guy that's going to be asking the tough questions and standing up and kind of steering the group. I saw somebody ask a question earlier about, preparing for a downturn. And, I think about like I think 2006, we always had this great leading indicator of a recession was our sales of our gift cards and gift coins. It just seemed to, whenever you would see those, and it happened in 2006, like, and we hit this huge recession in 07, 08, but it was really up to me to be the one to stand up there and ring the bell to everybody that this is something that we're seeing, and kind of rallying the troops to, get prepared for it, kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And like the CFO is the one that has to do that, because absent that, it's, you're going to kind of get caught blindsided.
Yeah, no, interesting. So a question, this is kind of a little bit of a hybrid of a audience question here, but the question is about people, employers and CFOs having open conversations with your employees to understand whether they're, are they comfortable with their development? Are they moving ahead at the pace they want to move ahead? Or there's something that they feel is missing, or are they going to about to leave because of that? And the question is kind of how do you manage that? And in particular, in today's environment where it's, I think each of you, and you might want to comment on what you're doing in terms of remote versus in office or whatever. So I guess, David, I don't know if you want to take a stab at that.
Sure. So I'll start with the second, maybe. So Maximus has basically a site-by-site policy as it relates to how often in-person is required. In our headquarters here and in probably most of our US locations, it's very flexible without a firm requirement. And I guess I'm a little bit, like most, a little bit torn on kind of which is the right. Personal advice I would give to people is, if you have the opportunity to go in, then you should, because I think building relationships is very important. On the other hand, I don't feel currently that requiring people to come in a large number of days is the right answer either, that we owe it to our people to trust them and give them that flexibility. And I think it's super important toward recruiting and retaining people to offer that to them. So while I don't think we need to force it on anyone, I would highly encourage people that have the opportunity to do that. And then the first part of the question, I think, was about how developing people on our teams.
How do you keep in touch, with how they're, where they are in terms of their comfort level with their development? Yeah,
I mean, communication. It's not always comfortable, but bringing things like that up often. I think people are not always comfortable bringing up advocating for themselves, all the time. So I think certainly we have a mentality here of looking internal first for any opportunities as they come up, and we really celebrate when we're able to give people opportunities to move around in the organization, even a lateral move, maybe, if it will give someone a new experience. So looking for opportunities for that, I think identifying high performers or high potential people and giving them maybe special attention is certainly their game. And I guess maybe again, back to sort of an advice, I'll switch to a bit of an advice for people that are looking for that. I'd say be careful not to, I've seen at times, and even in myself, kind of personal aspiration gets a little too important. And I'd encourage people to, while there's a healthy element to wanting to do your best and to aspire, I think the patience element is important, and, you know, focus on exceeding expectations, being good to other people. I think I've seen at times people that have such aspirations that it can either kind of lead to burnout even if they're succeeding, or, you know, any setbacks can really kind of threaten your identity that, you know. So anyway, just thought I'd offer a little bit of, you know, keep a balance in how you think about your own career, and certainly healthy ambition is great, but keep it healthy.
No, that's great advice, really. Jeff, you've kind of gone through this. You made a kind of radical change. You had to go back to being in Sarbanes-Oxley compliant, and you know, with your team and everything. I imagine some of the dialogue that you had, and maybe some of the skill sets that you needed changed as a result of that.
Yeah, we really had to sharpen up on all of that. You know, it was a change in the, you know, curing our significant deficiencies when Graham acquired us, you know, but I'd say in terms of the keeping in touch, close contact with your people is like, I mean, it's true. It's much easier when you're all kind of working side by side in the office, in the room, and you can keep tabs on everyone, you know, but it's regardless of that, it's so important, like outside of the formal, you know, annual performance review type setting to, you know, really keep close touch with everybody's workload and what they're thinking, and you know, what they have on their mind, and you know, and it can certainly be done with, you know, on Teams and Zoom and you know, preferably in person, but you know, I think, you know, just keeping close touch with everybody is, you know, and kind of helping them along the way as that goes on.
Yeah, communication. You know, it's probably, you know, a little. And again, it comes that becomes everybody, I think, has to work on that when they're if you're in on a hybrid basis or something like that, you know, and you're asking people to come into the office, make it. The one thing we hear consistently is make it intentional. You know, so you're not just saying get in here just to be in here, but let's figure out how we're going to interact when you're here.
And provide food. That's easier for Jeff, maybe.
That's right.
Yeah, right. Kind of hard to work that restaurant service remote, but not for your accounting team, your accounting and finance team. Carrie.
Yeah, I would say we're hybrid too, 2 days a week in the office, and we have one day where everyone comes in on Tuesdays. We do feed them as motivation. But yeah, the circumstance that my company's in today, having just spun out and kind of becoming an independent company, it became very important for us to stay in touch with our people to make sure that they felt that they were making the right decision coming with us. I mean, and that this is a real company, you know, long-term viable career path for them. So we really have been trying to hit them with different angles, with communication, with just, you know, communicating on a company level frequently, you know, quarterly, just giving them updates, but also not only the annual and the biannual check-ins with kind of their direct supervisors, but then we also have our HR person spend 30 minutes with each person at least twice a year, just whatever they want to talk about. So there's no agenda. They might want to talk about work and their career path, or he might be learning something personal about them, but it just, to give that element of the personal touch to an engagement from that perspective. Again, just to make sure that we are in touch with them, because it's so important that our whole company is our people. We're a service business, and that's with a lot of organizations. So it was just super important this first 12 months that we engaged and made sure that they understood what this organization is, and it was a lot of work the first 6 months. A lot of work for everybody. So there's a ton of stress. So it's just very important to do that. So we've tried to do it in different ways.
Yeah. We had an audience question here, which was somewhat about, you know, that if you're in a controller role or whatever, and maybe the company's not as large as certainly Maximus or whatever, where there maybe aren't as many other alternative ways. You know, the CFO seat is basically, you're looking at it and saying that's it. How do you grow, or how do you evaluate whether I should, you know, is there a stepping off point? And I guess from my perspective, it's, you know, there's a polling question here. Anyhow, so, from a stepping up when, like, are you still growing, and when is, and I think several of you have mentioned kind of just getting more operational, too, and whatever. And Jeff, maybe you could, because you came in as a non-restaurateur. You're the accountant among, about, I don't know, it wasn't 2,000 then, but it was a large number of restaurateurs.
Yeah, we clearly,
you had to earn
we
their
clearly
trust
don't have
and
a lot
respect.
of, a lot of finance, opportunities coming up all the time. But, it's, opening a new restaurant is really great for us because it does create opportunities, primarily for the operations folks to, kind of be promoted, and other, people below them, move into new roles. We're in a situation now where we have these 3 new restaurants coming online, in a fairly short period of time. There's a fine line to walk there, that we can't really thin out our ranks too severely, to try to staff, those positions, all internally. And so we need to fill in, outside hiring, but it's an exciting time. And even in the finance and accounting side, I mean, there's great projects to be, kind of hone your skills on, around the construction and opening of these new restaurants. So
yeah,
the growth is really it's a morale booster. I mean, even if even if you're still in the same position or whatever, it's really good for everybody. So.
Yeah. Carrie or David, anything on that you want to?
Sure. I think my advice for the controller in this situation is, which may or may not be practical depending on the relationship, but is to try to build a really strong relationship with that CFO and have open dialogue about it. I think, if that ends with the CFO supporting the controller and taking an external CFO role, that's great as well. And so I would seek that kind of type of engagement if possible.
Well, that word communication keeps coming up, so that's important. And Carrie, anything real quick then?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, if there's ways to kind of bridge yourself, if you're interested to go into the finance path from controller, obviously this is what this question's about. There's ways to just bridge those connection points across the board. So it's like, if you're the controller, if it's an organization with a treasurer, it's like communicating and kind of bridging the accounting to the forecast and finding touch points and just getting more and more acclimated and in touch with the finance side. I think build your skill set, your knowledge toward finance. And again, if it's just the CFO there and not, it depends on the organization, but I think kind of basically agreeing with what these two have said is, I think some roles can kind of straddle, and if you can get closer to that and start to even create that element within your job, it'll start to take you there.
Yeah. Great. Okay. I see Grant has appeared on screen, which means we're getting right to the end of our time here today. So I'm going to give you the speed round. Last word of advice for the audience, if you have it. I'll just go across my screen. It's David, Jeff, and Carrie, but I'll go ahead, David.
I think I'm out of advice, so I'll end with be good to other people and treat people well, and I think that serves you well over the long term.
I love that. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, Jeff.
Yeah, and I just reiterate that point about making sure you're taking care of your needs and going after what you need in your career.
Yeah, great. Carrie.
Yeah, and just remember, your careers they don't have to be linear. It's an opportunistic world we're in as we get to this level, and do what's right for you and be true to yourself and to the organization, and it'll work out.
Yeah, wonderful advice. That's great. Anyhow, thank you so much to our panel here today. Really appreciate it. You've done a fantastic job, and I think everyone's benefited from your advice here today. Grant, I'll hand it back to you.
Well, thank you. This has been a great discussion and learning event today, and we really appreciate everyone spending their morning with us today. Before we wrap up, I'd first like to thank Don and the distinguished panel, including Carrie McIntyre, Jeff Owens, and David Mutrin, for sharing some of their unique experiences and knowledge with us today. It was really great discussion. I'd also like to thank our exceptional marketing support team at Cherry Bekaert, including Amanda Kiefer, Caitlin Agikian, Leah Gerhardt, Maddie Robbins, Ziba Farha, and Kate Dharma for preparing and running today's event and helping make it happen. So great. Big thanks to them. Our next event will be Anchoring Your Foothold in GovCon and DCAA's Hot Topics. That'll be with Tracy Sheps, who was on earlier today, a partner with Cherry Bekaert. Please make sure you log in early. And then on the last slide, again, just want to thank all of our sponsors, especially today, Cordia Resources by Cherry Bekaert, for the great presentation and CFO panel. So thank you, everyone. We all look forward to seeing you again this time next week. Thanks.